Awesome. Well, it's really good to see everybody. And I imagine that as we go along, some more folks will trickle in. We are expecting a small group. This is it kind of intended to be a little bit more of an intimate group. So thanks to all of you for making time to come and enjoy this town hall with us. The plan is that Tom and I will go through some of the things that have been happening this school year, just bring everybody up to speed. We're extremely excited because, as you all know, last year there was no program abroad. So to have students abroad again this year and to see pictures coming in and all the stories that have been just pouring in from our campuses abroad, we're really excited to share some of those with you and to share some photos as well. So that will be kind of the highlight, I would say, is Tom will give some just overview thoughts. We'll do a photo slideshow that I'll run through with you. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's next for SYA. We just had our admissions application deadline last week, so Tom can give an update on that. And then, we'll keep our eye on questions that come through. Feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function, or if you want, since it's such a small group, if you want to just jump in as we're going along, that's also fine. But definitely encourage questions and comments since it's a nice small group of us. Yeah, so with that, I will hand it over to Tom to kick things off.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thanks for everything that you do for SYA, including finishing our first ever comprehensive campaign, which we crossed our goal. And I also want to say special thanks to Jamie, who's one of the co-chairs of that effort. Just simply amazing. And to be able to do that and finish it off during a pandemic is even more amazing. So thank you for pulling the rabbit out of the hat. Why don't, since we're just a small number of us, let's just take a minute and just introduce ourselves, because you all are dear friends of SYA. I think some of you know each other, some of you don't. So if you could just quickly introduce yourself, your class year, and if you want to say one word or two words about SYA. Jamie, why don't we start with you?
Jamie Broderick, France class of 71, and I'm headed back for my 50th reunion with 1 year delay in April. Looking forward to that.
Terrific. Another co-chair of that great effort I just talked about, Alex Alger, is here. So Alex, why don't you introduce yourself? You're on mute there, Alex.
I am indeed. Hey there, Alex Alger, France 79, parent of a China 2011 alum, and just happy to be here. I always see a lot of familiar faces. Hey there. Hi all. It's great to see everybody.
Great.
Good time when we can meet in person. What else should I be saying, Tom? What?
If you have a word, just a word that comes to mind when you think of SYA.
Fantastic.
I like that word. Thank you. And so both Jamie and Alex have been on the board, and so has Rick Hardy. So Rick, why don't we go to you next?
Thanks, Tom, and it's great to see everybody. Rick Hardy, former head of school at Concord Academy and former board member. The word that comes to mind, not a big surprise about SYA, resilient. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. And our current board chair, Holland.
Hello. Hi, Holland Lynch, class of France 86. And yes, board chair, and very happy to be board chair on the other side of the pandemic, I would say. Word that comes to mind for SYA, I mean, I hate to sound cliche, but transformational. I truly, it's
a good one.
It did it. Great. And Rick has done a great job. Rick, thank you so much. You were there all the steps of the way for the campaign. So why don't you introduce yourself?
I think I just did.
Oh, no. Rick Goddard.
Hi, I'm Rick Goddard, France 1969. And I have been a huge supporter of SYA all my life, and it was totally transformative for me.
Yeah. And Rick, that was the second class in
second year. Yep.
Yeah. Great. And Courtney, as an alum and a mom of 2 SYAers, right?
Yep, so I am, my name is Courtney Monick. I am Spain 1990 myself. And then my son was there well, 2 years ago, and I have a daughter there right now. So we've sort of straddled the pandemic here with my son was in the class that was sent home very abruptly. And then I have a daughter who's been maneuvering COVID this year, although it's been awesome. Both years were awesome, regardless of, the COVID interruptions. And we just got back actually from Zaragoza. We were there over Christmas visiting. So I would say 2 words. One is passion, because I'm watching my kids just come alive again or my daughter in particular, after a year of being kind of online school, hybrid school, just watching her kind of light up with school again has been so amazing. And then I would say family, because my kids have had the most amazing families, and they have become like family to us now. Especially, we're still getting to know Meredith. So they had COVID over break, so we didn't get to spend as much time with them when we were there. But Luke's family, we spent a ton of time with, and they're actually coming to Boston this summer to visit us. And so the families have just been amazing. And I'm still in touch with my family. So that's a huge part of SYA for us.
Courtney, I always talk about the secret sauce of SYA, host families.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just terrific, terrific. Naomi is there. Can you hear us, Naomi? Actually, on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I guess I was on deep double mute there. Naomi Fink, France, 1992. Yeah, in one word, SYA, I would say it's empowering.
Great. Well, nice. And how are things in LA? You had warmth and then hail.
Yes, it was decidedly odd. There was hail yesterday. Yes, we had unseasonably warm weather, and then hail. Definitely kind of echoes of climate change. I think there are reports that sea levels are going to rise by a foot, or yes, that not so good. So definitely we need to cultivate our next generation of leaders from SYA to help us solve these long-standing problems.
We'll do that for you. We'll do that. And Chase, how are you from Washington?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Wonderful to join you. I've had the pleasure of enthusing about the impact of SYA upon me with Tom recently. My brother was on SYA, and when I look back at kind of my career, it's kind of unthinkable. So in that sense, it's wonderful to learn a bit more and support what you're doing, Tom.
Well, thanks. And Chase, you were France, was it 80?
81.
81.
80, 80, you're correct. It was 80.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
80.
Great. Well, wonderful to see you all. And Courtney, it's kind of interesting, as you mentioned, your kids straddling the 2 times. I can remember that evening when we got the word that all kids had to vacate Europe. And I pulled an all-nighter, which I hadn't done since college. And we evacuated the kids out of there right away. And of course, the airlines took every advantage of jacking up the prices at that moment. But we got them back. And what was interesting is, I would say about 90, almost 100% of the kids stayed with us to finish the school year, whether that out of China or the European campuses. And so we were able to actually be connected back to their teachers and hearing what was going on in Europe. And I think that was a nice transition back to America, because it was so sudden where we had to pull them out. And then I'm thinking of Meredith, right now in Spain. And, I asked the RDs, who've been around, and I said, how is it? And they said, well, you know what? They have masks on. We had to do a little bit on the independent travel to cut that back, but now it's back up. But it feels like a regular year, which is really nice. And I would say that the regular year for me, 2 examples I can give you. One is the other day, the kids got back in France from a trip to Paris. And the kids were very sweet. They, texted the RD and just said, you know what, thank you for this. I know it's not been an easy year with the COVID stuff, and you're like family to us, and you've made us a family. And I'm just like, hey, that was pretty sweet from an adolescent. Like, that's pretty amazing. And true, absolutely true. And the other piece is that you've got these kids who are really, actually this year, I think I've had one discipline case to deal with, which is pretty amazing that we're almost, 3/4 of the way through. And I think the kids are just so happy to be together, to being on an adventure, all those things that are SYA. So it feels very much like it has, which is really, really good. And we did have a little run of COVID, started in France in December. Never enough that we had to kind of move to online. It kind of went through a few kids and host families, and then it went to Spain kind of at the beginning of the second semester. But that's quieted down. Italy's just had a few cases, and so my hope is we're on the other side of that stuff. But the other amazing thing to me, and I look at Rick, who's been a school head, understands this. I thought I would hear from a lot of anxious parents, but not a peep. Like, I think that's a reflection of, we have an intrepid group of kids and parents. So, and they kind of knew that this is going to be an odd year. But also, I think that we have such strong RDs in place in the various schools that they just trust them. And, one of the, I have to remain on the optimistic side in the world. And there are a number of things that happen because of COVID that have been really good for SYA. And I'll name one of them. And that is, it used to be that the kids would meet their RDs. The only time would be when they were at Logan Airport getting ready to go across the Atlantic, and the RD would shepherd them over to the site. We introduced the RDs into the mix during the admissions process. So this year, for instance, we did the, if you're interested in Italy night, there was Pat Scanlon, who's the RD. He had 2 current kids on with him. And then last year we did RDs in the summer twice before they got to leave. And then we sent someone from our office over with the kids. And so I think the parents get much more, and the kids get much more connected to the RD and with each other. Mm-hmm. So there's that kind of smoothing of and ease of transition. And of course, this generation of kids, the second you get admitted, they're having groups on social media that, meet the other kids, and so they know each other really well beforehand. So it's nice to see, and really, really good. So I know Erin has worked hard to pull together some pictures of what the kids are up to these days. And again, we get them out both on group travel and then independent travel. And what we do is we do a lot of group travel so that the kids get comfortable with how they are able to safely travel in the country. And we only allow kids to stay within the country. And then they earn the privilege at some point later on to do independent travel. They have to show the maturity. They have to have their grades. We also are pretty stickler, like if they're not speaking the host language a lot at school, we're like, no, you're not demonstrating the stuff we want to see. So they earn that kind of thing. But what Erin, I think you're going to pull together pictures from the school travel that we've had, right?
Yeah, I have a little photo slideshow from just highlights from the year so far. So that includes some travel and just some fieldwork stuff, and we'll go through that. It's just a nice visual image of what's happening, because we talk about it, but once you see it and you see the pictures, it brings it a little bit more to life. So happy to put that up and run through it if we're ready. But yeah, maybe it's
right. I would just say one thing, Erin, which is, I don't know whether you guys are familiar with the tool called Slack, but we use that overseas, and then we have it in the home office. And there's a channel that we've created called What's Happening. And people post mainly from the campuses, pictures like this and stories. So I feel much more connected than I ever did to what's going on day to day. These are from the Slack channel, right? Yeah.
Yep, everything's from Slack. So that's the beauty of technology. And you'll notice that sometimes I try to highlight all 3 campuses as much as possible. I can only use what content is being sent. So there may be some things that look to be missing. It's not because they haven't happened, it's just because we don't have the photos for them. So just keep that in mind as we go along. Let me just get this going. Let's see. Over here. Share screen. All right, can everybody see the slide? Good, great. So the first thing that happens during the year, kids get on a plane. So this is just a fun little image from each of our groups at Logan Airport in the fall. So you've got Spain on the top left there, and that's you know, a pretty big group of kids, and then France on the right, and then the Italy group, which is a little bit smaller. So and not all the kids from all the campuses are there, but it's just a really nice opportunity to get a picture at the beginning. Like, this is what I find to be super exciting. I know it's just an airport photo, but it's like, oh my God, it's actually happening. Like, we're going abroad again. They're getting on the plane. They're ready to go. So that was a great way to kick off the year.
Hey, Erin, you have 2 slides up, so it has the current one and then the next one. So is there a way to just...
Yeah, let me see. I always forget how it does this. Hold up. We can do this. We've been using Zoom for a long time now. I have to remember where that setting is. There it is.
Courtney,
Okay.
were you at Logan? Remind me, were you at Logan in the...
I was, yes. It never gets easier saying goodbye, but it's always exciting.
Okay, let's try this again. My apologies. Here we go. How's that?
Better. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. All right. So then one of the things that happens at the very beginning of the year, students meet their host families. So this is just kind of a fun little snapshot from each country. I loved the one on the top left from France with the dog, just totally doing its thing in the image, and just life happening in that photo. And of course, the one from Italy with just a table full of delicious looking food and very happy looking family. And then of course with Spain in front of Pilar there, just a beautiful image. So that's just love seeing kids with their host families, and just that immediate bonding that happens at the beginning of the year. And then we've got a couple images here from our Immersion Unit. And as we've talked about before, that looks a little bit different since, especially since we started the campaign, because one of the initiatives was curricular innovation and specifically revamping the curriculum to be much more intentional and place-based. So the Immersion Unit's a much more intensive orientation. It's not just kind of a simple like, okay, well, you meet your family and then you kind of get to know each other. That's very intentionally designed so that students are spending a lot of time with their host family and a lot of time with each other and a lot of time walking around the city and getting to know the public transportation. So, and such that in the first few weekends of their time abroad, they have closed weekends. So it's meant to just be spent with their host family and getting to know that and getting acquainted with speaking the language and all of that. So the top left there is our class in Spain, and that's Megan Roof, who's the resident director. They're in the park. And that was just kind of the first meeting place that they had as a group to get to know each other still. You know, as we were getting acquainted with having SYA during COVID and doing as much outside as possible. And then the France image, this is one of our favorites from the year. One of the first activities that they do is they surrender their cell phones, and they're given a paper map of the city, very old school, and they have to go to certain landmarks. So they're learning how to get to those different landmarks and learning how to navigate the city. And, you know, the faculty are close by, and they have a time limit that they're supposed to do all of that in. So this is some students taking a look at that map and trying to figure their way around. And then similarly at the bottom, Italy does a very similar exercise where they have students identify different piazzas within Viterbo and go to those different piazzas. And I think there's a project where they report on like the water flow within the city. It's all very cool. And just getting to know the different, and especially Viterbo with all the winding little streets and everything. So That is part of the Immersion Unit. And then kind of to cap off the Immersion Unit at the beginning of the year, they usually take a local trip somewhere. So this is just a picture from the SYA Spain students at Alcazar, and then SYA France students at, I'm going to butcher that, so I'm not going to say it, an abbey that's in France. And obviously Italy also had a trip. I just don't happen to have a photo of that. And then there's a lot, as you can imagine, with students living in Europe, a lot that has to do with art, and they do a lot of different projects going around the city, finding different architecture structures and local street art and that kind of thing. So this is a couple of examples. That's why Spain students at the Roman Theater, and then that's why France students at La Gacilly. And of course, a great SYA activity, especially being, again, in Europe, is cooking. So we've got a couple of pictures here. And the first one is from SYA France. This woman has been apparently teaching students to cook for years and years and years now. So this is like a long-standing tradition just to have kids. And I think that she has them into her home. And if Susan's on, I think she could probably fill in much more context. But every year the same woman does this, and it's a really special activity for the students in France. And then in Italy, throughout the year, they have Marco Lanzi has different cooking courses that he offers, and this happened to be one of the first ones that was offered, with students preparing cooking. And it was, I think the course was called When in Rome. So I think they made homemade pasta and, you know, other Italian things, as you can imagine. And then I call this one potpourri. It's just kind of a mixed bag of other cool photos from the fall and October specifically. Always love the excursion for the SYA France students to Mont Saint-Michel. I think typically they do the crossing of the bay. I don't know if they did this year, but the whole group goes and they do the kind of the pilgrimage crossing experience. And then in SYA Spain, there's the Pilar Festival, and there are some host families that really do all of the traditional dress and celebrating. And, you know, if you're lucky enough to be in one of those families that you can put on all the traditional attire and go take a photo, then this, you know, I think that's a really special experience, especially right in front of the church. And then in Italy, this was called the Excursione a Sorpresa, which means surprise excursion. And basically in the morning, the students were told that they would be going to a town or another place in the province of Viterbo, and they had to find their way there and pick a landmark within that place to take a picture, and that's their proof of life. And it was a fieldwork activity. A lot of times at the beginning of the year, you know, especially in Italy, they'll intentionally do fieldwork activities that students can't get to by train. So they have to use another method of public transport to get there, like learn the bus system or whatever it may be. And that's always ends up being a little more challenging.
Yeah.
And the extracurricular activities, there are so many. I could have probably put a whole collage of activities that students do. These stood out. SYA Italy students taking a photography class. And then we've got 2 students this year that are singing in the conservatory in Rennes. And I wish I had posted a video, but there's a couple different videos of them throughout the year doing different performances. And the ones that are circled in yellow there are the 2 students, Annika Johnson and Donovan Martin.
Wow.
And that's a prestigious performance center. And I know they have to go through like a regular audition process, and it's quite an endeavor to do that. So good to see them getting involved. And then we'll just kind of briefly, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, our kids adore being connected to fellow teenagers in the country. So those kinds of things, they get to just kind of learn behind the scenes, what's it like to be a teenager in Rennes or whatever. So they love those activities.
Oh, for sure. It's a good opportunity to connect with their local peers. So then for this part, we'll breeze through these because there's more information online and you can read the stories that we wrote about them. But there were the big fall trips, so the multi-day traveling kind of outside of the normal kind of close proximity to the city. In SYA Spain, they did 3 different places. And the first one is Andalusia. So there's just some pictures from that. And like I said, there's more information. We wrote a story about this earlier in the fall, so you can kind of get all of the context for the photos from that. And then Barcelona.
Wow.
And from the Basque Country. And I think what's fun about all of them, but this one in particular, is they actually do it like in the bottom left there, there's a bunch of bikes. They do a biking tour around the city, around the area. And again, it's like just to get to know the place. So it's not just kind of dropping in and seeing things. It's really kind of immersing in that city and getting a better sense of what's there and what's interesting. And a lot of times, because we do these trips from year to year, the places get to know us. And I know with the picture with the kids in the tunnel in the top left there, that's not something that every group gets to do. That's something that's kind of special for SYA, that they let us do that because they know us. And they like to provide that opportunity. So it's pretty cool. And then SYA Italy went to Florence. I love that picture on the top left, reenacting the statue there. And actually on the bottom right, the woman that's standing on the right with her arms kind of outstretched, she's a former faculty member for SYA Italy, turned tour guide in Florence. So it was great to get reconnected with her and have her show the students around. And, you know, she understands SYA and all of the Florence history. So it's good to kind of combine worlds in that way. And then we've got SYA France, and they are in Marseille area. And then I feel like I'm going to mispronounce that, and I apologize. Sete? And this is a fun one too. In the picture on the top right, the woman that's in the very middle with the khakis and the navy, she is an SYA alumna that the group came upon during that trip. So she just happened to be out, and we ran into her somehow, and she was like, "Oh, is this SYA?" And then we got a great photo with her. So it's a small world. They're out there. They're in the wild.
I thought you were going to say she swept up and said she was with them for a week or something.
Yeah. She just decided to chaperone. We don't really know her. You know, she's an alum.
That's great.
And then just some fun photos from Italy in November. One of the things that the students always do is the olive harvest. So that top left photo is from that. I mentioned that we have Marco Lanzi, who does numerous courses throughout the year. So this is another one. I believe it's making egg pasta, egg noodles. And then on the right there is, it's what's called Scarpette Rosse, or Rosse. And it's a ceramics course that the students do. And it's for an exhibition related to violence against women, and it's run by the local council in Viterbo. So they go and I'm not sure if they make the shoes or just paint them, but it's an activity that they do together. And then later those shoes go on display in town. And again, it's for an exhibition related to raising awareness of violence against women. So it's kind of a cool activist type project that students can get involved in. And then in November, this is just always fun for people who might be interested in social media and kind of what we're doing for marketing. Since we didn't have alumni on high school campuses this year, since we didn't have a class last year, doing an Instagram takeover is a really fun way to kind of show the experience live. So we had a couple volunteers. We do have boy students this year, I promise, but they all happen to be young women. And all they do is they go on our Instagram and they take over for a day. They do a little stories based on like what they're doing and the trips that they're going on in class. And it just gives that very firsthand perspective as to what a day at SYA looks like. And it's a great marketing tool because I feel like as a high schooler, that's the question that they have most often is like, well, what does a day in the life of SYA look like? So they get that experience by watching our takeovers. We actually do them again I think the next one's in March for our yield season. So once students have been accepted and are making that decision to enroll with SYA, we use that as another just kind of visual marketing image to get them to say, oh yeah, I definitely want to do that. That looks great.
And Erin, I just add here that what's interesting is most kids in America looking at schools will get a chance to go to those campuses and get toured around and talk to current students and stuff. So our challenge at SYA, since 99% of our kids won't see the campus before they decide, is to be creative like this. And so we have a great marketing group that's, and using the kids' authentic voices, I think are critical.
Yeah, they're teenagers being teenagers. It's great. They all can kind of speak that language with each other.
Right.
Erin, what is the boy-girl mix?
Depends on country. Spain, I would say, is a little more balanced with boys and girls. France this year's really light on boys. And Italy, Tom, you can help me out with that one. I'm not entirely sure.
Still more girls than boys. I'm trying to get probably like 65-35%.
Yeah. And I think we're starting to see that shift a little bit with, and Tom will talk about this in a little bit, the semester offering that we have. I think that really helps us to get some boys, especially, and I know, Tom, you have a specific story about that we might not have been able to get into the full year program. So we're hoping that that can help us with a little more balance, gender balance. It's a good question. So then we mentioned earlier local peers. SYA France meets up with the Jean Mace High School, and they just shadow their peer at that high school for a day and have conversation with them, talk about the differences between French and American high schools. And then SYA Italy actually has, I think it's a club that they meet up with local peers on. I think it's a monthly basis, and they actually have a conversation topic that they discuss. And for this one, it was the slanguage of texting and the difference between schools. So schools in Italy versus schools in America. And it's just a good way for high schoolers to connect on those topics that they share. And obviously, this one, they're making mac and cheese, Kraft mac and cheese for their Italian counterparts. So sharing that good old American culture.
And cuisine.
And cuisine, yeah, right. Thanksgiving is always kind of a special activity. It's obviously an American holiday, so our countries abroad don't observe it in the same way. It's very sweet, though. A lot of times host families will try and do something in recognition to make their student feel a little bit more at home. So we've just got a couple pictures here of families that did that. And sometimes students cook for their host family. They take ownership and they say, I'm going to make the meal and share with you my tradition. And it's always a fun activity for them. And then in France, they actually this was a fieldwork activity. And again, there's a story about it online, but they went to the hospitality school that's not too far from Rennes. And the students there actually prepared a whole meal for the SYA France students. And they prepared a little trivia game and showed them how to decorate a table for the holidays. And it was just this really kind of sweet partnership in them showing the things that they've learned in their hospitality courses, but sharing that with the SYA France students. And there's some, as a thank you, the SYA France students are going to have them come to Rennes, I think sometime this spring, and try to do a similar type of experience for them. So good little connection made there. And it's just fun Christmas. SYA France apparently really got into the holiday decoration and the Santa hats. So they're all looking very happy there. And a fun story too, the guy in the red pants on the right in that photo, his name's Ernie Chen. He's actually taught for SYA China, SYA Italy, and now SYA France. And he's taught math for all of those. So he's making the rounds. Maybe some point he'll hit Spain as well, but he knows SYA really well. He was most recently at Wilmerding High School in San Francisco. Holland, you probably have met him, I think. And then just on the right, there's, a lot of US families will come over to the country and the students will kind of give them the tour. And this family was lucky enough to celebrate Christmas together with both of their families. So just a cute little Christmas photo. And then at the end of the first semester, they have this is a new process for us with figuring out a good way to make the transition for the semester students to make their exit and then prepare for the next group. So in each country, there's a little farewell ceremony, and the full year students, I think in most countries, were all, saying kind words about their semester peers and talking about how much they would miss them and just trying to honor them and give them a good send off. So this is from SYA Spain and SYA France. And then the next group comes. So in January, the next group of semester students came in, and we try to keep those groups balanced in terms of numbers as much as possible. So, and we also, and Tom will talk about this in a little bit, are trying to keep those cohorts fairly small. We want the full year experience to be our main experience, but also make accommodations for students that might not be able to do that. So that's why the groups of semester students are fairly small, and we hope will remain so. Some field work.
How many kids are coming or came for the spring?
It depended upon, Alex, on the site. At most, I think it was 12 in Spain.
Okay.
About 12 and 12. And it's interesting, and
Quite a big number.
I'll hold, Erin, when you're done, I'll jump into admissions because of some interesting stories for that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but it's a good question. So this is just from some field work in Italy, and I think one of the most exciting projects is the students making cheese. Very Italian, and obviously spending some time at museums and whatnot, observing art. And then this is from France. And I just have in my notes here, because I posted a little bit more about the Eco Museum that the students visited there. It's a testimony of Breton traditional agricultural practices. So they first discovered the farm, its engines, as well as regional domestic animals. So then the students went to a temporary exhibition dedicated to pedagogical models used in the 19th and 20th century in science classes. And then for the picture on the right, this is a different group of students spent the afternoon in public parks in the four corners of the city. They were asked to examine different aspects of these parks and to create an observational drawing of a natural park feature in a scientific manner. So this is the kind of field work that we are asking our students to do, quite in depth.
Right.
And then in Spain, they had a contemporary art project. It's just a little image of that. And most recently, in Italy, is the day of Remembrance. And this is a really important and poignant day in Italy. They have a man whose name is Luca Bruzices, and he is a historian who knows a lot about families of Viterbo who were involved in the Holocaust or in the fascism movement of the World War II. So students walked through Viterbo with him, and they also watched the film, and I know many of us have seen it too, Life is Beautiful. And then they visited a couple homes of where families in Viterbo were hidden, Jewish families were hidden from the Nazi, from being deported. And then this picture on the right there is at a local university that used to be a prison during fascism. And behind where that photo was taken, were the cells where Jewish prisoners were held before being transferred to Germany. So it's a very poignant getting into the space and learning about the history from a local historian who's very invested and knew some of the families that were involved. And I know it's a very special day in Viterbo. And in Spain, the faculty member that posted these pictures wrote a novel, which I won't read to you, about all of these images. But, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce again, I'm going to call it Belchite. So there's a lot of different components to this fieldwork activity. The students researched about the topic beforehand. They got a sense of the emotions and art linked to the military conflict and the feelings and memories that nowadays locals still keep regarding this difficult episode of the close past. So they used traditional music and short documentary videos. That's what they used for their research. And then when they actually got there and got to the local area, they conducted several interviews in the street with locals to see if those feelings and emotions matched up with what they had learned in their research. And they, as part of fieldwork in all different activities that students do, often they're broken up into different groups, and then they come back and they reflect and they share together. And that's part of the learning experiences, is the reflection and then teaching it to your peers. So that was kind of this experience. The first group visited the old village ruins with the guide who had been born and bred there himself. And then the other group went and they walked a trench line. And they visited a late seminary that was used during the war as a work camp place, and another displaced camp that was called Little Russia. So then I think they exchanged and they each did the other activity, but very much. And I mean, we were all just kind of, it's beautiful and interesting in that robin's egg blue sky. I think we were all like, wow, what an excursion. And then most recently, SYA France went to Paris. So there's some photos here. At the left there is Pascal, who's been an SYA faculty member for a long time, brought students to the Alta Grande Mosque de Paris. And he took the group on a tour through the garden, the library, and its tea house. And just the note here is the history of the Paris Mosque is inextricably linked to France's colonization. And then obviously there's a group there that went to Shakespeare and Company and a couple other museums that were part of the France excursions and fieldwork experiences. And SYA Italy went to Arezzo, and they started with a visit to Sante Ucciarelli, a cantina and producer of Vin Santo. So it's a visit to the villa connected and owned by a grandparents of a current student that's in Italy. And her grandparents are Italian, so they own this, this little winery. And so followed by a presentation from Massimo Lopez Pena. And then they had an Italian tradition followed by a beautiful lunch in a trattoria in the center of town. And that's actually the location of where Life is Beautiful was filmed. So all sorts of good and interesting stuff. And that concludes the photo slideshow.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that my pronunciations were not probably correct. And also that I don't have all of the information about all the photos. It's all coming from overseas. So I'm sorry if there's context that I missed, but I think it's a great illustration of what's been going on. It's super exciting for us to see those pictures coming through, and we're just happy to share them with you. So yeah, if there's any questions about those. Great. Tom, back to you.
Sure, thanks. Anyway, so we just crossed our mark on the admissions deadline. The great news is there's a lot of wonderful interest in SYA, which is just warms my heart. And in particular, we were worried at the beginning of the recruiting season because some of our best advocates are students who have gone to SYA and then back at their schools. I mean, they really kind of talk it up to their peers. And obviously, we didn't have that this year. Despite that, we sent our people out. We didn't get into every school. Some schools still aren't going to allow people from off campus to their campus. But we got into many schools and a lot of the member schools, and just terrific interest. And so we've now, as Erin mentioned, we've got this pilot semester thing, and it's both fall and spring. And roughly what's nice about this year is we got a balance of same number in the fall with the same number in the spring at a certain site, just because we didn't want to lose, have too much of a reduction or influx. So that's worked out really well from our perspective. A number of the kids first semester said, you know what, can I stay? And we said, well, no, because the visa and all that stuff is very clear in Europe that, we only got the visa for the certain amount of time. So, we have been talking to the kids this year who applied to the semester and just said, we want to make sure, let's hear your reasons why. And, you know, some of those kids decided, so, you know, the full year makes more sense to me after those conversations. So that was good. Although there are kids, a semester really does make great sense for. So I'll give you a few examples. One is money reasons. There are some families who just say, you know, at the price tag of over $60,000, my kid goes to a school that's a lot less or free. So I can't shell out that kind of money with college on the horizon. There are other cases, and here's where I want to bring in a great example for us, which is the quarterback of the football team at Taft is applying for next year for spring semester in France. Perfect. You know, like he wasn't going to leave in the fall. And it's a guy. Terrific. You know, we're really happy about that. So, you know, there are some wonderful examples of why the semester program works. Although I have to say, in my heart and in the hearts of alums and in the hearts of the teachers and all of that, the full year experience does mean a lot. And so we're in that kind of balancing act. And I think what the message that kids will hear of this thing is, if you applied to be a semester kid, it's going to be really competitive. We'll probably have to give a nod to should give a nod to the member school kids who are applying to the semester program, because there are, you know, kind of our strong connections. So we'll see how it plays out. And but really, really excited. And as I mentioned earlier too, we've got these number of ways for them to connect with the RDs and current students to hear more kind of live of what's going on as they make their decisions. So I'm just relieved, excited, over the moon, excited, I should say. So I know and Erin, I've been talking a lot. I just want maybe Holland, if you just want to say a word about the board currently or anything that would be helpful, and then we'll open up to questions.
Yeah, I thank you. And this is just so great to see the schools in action. That was really fun and something I think we don't see enough of. But it just really amazing to see how much SYA has bounced back over the COVID setbacks and the COVID closure. And it's incredible, not only in terms of looking at those photos, really the only way you would know that we were in a time of any difference was an occasional mask. And it looks like the experience is just carrying on in the typical SYA incredibly amazing way. I'm wondering if you might consider raising the age limit. Maybe you could go up to 55 as a cap for, I don't know, just an idea. It looks so fun. And to know that also just interest in kids going on SYA for the next year is still has really bounced back, because there was a question in everyone's minds: is this going to really impact, and have a real influence on the number of applicants that we'll be seeing this year? And I think it's a real testament to the work of everybody on the campuses, in the home office, the impact of the donations that have come in, the courage of the students and the sending families, the work of everybody. It's this full SYA village, and it's really great to see. And I'll also say that the board, our spring meeting this year, will be in Viterbo, and we're really excited, both as a board, to be able to dive into the work of one of the campuses and really see it in action, and also be in a place that for the board is away from where we usually do our work in North Andover. So I hope that will allow the board members to bring a different perspective and a different view of the work that we do. So anyway, it's really exciting and thrilling and wonderful. And thanks, Tom and Erin, for getting us all even more invested and excited about it.
Thanks. In addition to the trustees and former trustees enjoying life in our campus in Italy, we're also going to celebrate its 20th year. So Italy turns 20, which is terrific. And as we, Rick, that makes France what, 55?
Like that, 53,
Yeah.
68 was the first year.
68, okay. and then Spain, our oldest, although France is the one that's been in the same location since it started. So yeah, terrific. Well, we've done a lot of talking. How can we, what do people want to hear about? Any questions, comments, anything that we can speak to?
Tom, can I ask you?
Go ahead, Jane.
The dynamics, I'm interested in the dynamics of the semester program, because we talked a lot about it when I was on the board. And I'm assuming that the dynamics of a fall semester cohort is different from the dynamics of a spring semester. So the fall semester, kids come in, they're normal just like everybody else, and then they drop off the face of the earth. In the spring, you've got this group that's already up and running, and then these new people come in. How has that gone, that integration halfway through the year?
Better than I expected. That's my first reaction. 2, we had the full year kids help plan the orientation for the second semester kids, which I think was a really good way, because they would know really what they want to hear. So that's another thing. And it's interesting, in both France and Spain, as you guys know, you need the language. And the good news is that the spring semester kids were in school. There wasn't a summer, so their language skills, they were, kind of up to speed. So they have hit the ground running. The one challenge actually is in Italy, because those kids are coming in new to the language in January. You've got a current group of kids who are so happy that they have kind of gotten their heads and hearts around the language. So Pat and I are talking a little bit about that dynamic, which is, for instance, they have to change their assembly a little bit. They go more back to English. And I think the full year kids are going like, wait a second, we've been talking in Italian. So there's some little things we got to work out, but it's been really much smoother. And my question in my mind is there a tipping point? Like if we're doing a dozen, can we get up to 20? Does that change? Where does the critical mass kind of shift a social balance? And I just don't know where that is yet.
Before I go back on mute, I just want to remind you that the School Year Abroad London office is hosting the senator from New Hampshire next week.
That wonderful senator? Good. Thank you. Thank you.
There's an absolutely fabulous senator from New Hampshire coming.
Thanks for doing that, Jamie. I wish I were in her suitcase, but I'm not.
Tom, before we move to something else. So what are proportionally the numbers in these 3 campuses? I mean, I don't know whether you have sort of a limit per semester for these semester students. And if so, are you reaching that limit already? Or have you found that it's just tremendously?
So that's a great question. So overall bodies, so without, semesters, usually we're in 60 to 65 in Spain. France has been all over the map, although we've had this kind of strong resurgence. So this year there's 64 kids in France, which is actually a little tight for that building, because it's very, as you know, it's very vertical and stuff. And then Italy is, I think, in the 45-ish range, which is good. So really a good, really good numbers. Then this year, as I said, probably 12-ish each semester in Spain, probably 10-ish in France, and maybe 8 to 10 there. Now the question is, this coming year, do we put an absolute cap on it? Rachel and I are looking through the quality and just trying to balance it. In the ideal, in my mind, it would be getting as many full year kids who are strong, and then backing in the semester kids is the way I kind of looking at it.
Okay.
Could you fill the class with full year kids based on the applications you have now?
Almost, not quite. Not quite. So the semester is helping us, actually. I mean, it's a good, really good.
Whole idea.
Yeah. And the other 2 things I should mention too. Several years back, we experimented, and we've now implemented a sophomore option. So sophomores could apply to SYA. We make them go through more hoops to talk about maturity, both with the kid and the parents. So we don't, we're very careful to make sure those kids are ready. And it's been steady state. It's probably about 10% of our kids are sophomores, and it's worked out well. We don't have to totally separate them in any way. They are part of the every class, and it just works. The other thing, this coming summer, after 2 summers we couldn't do our summer school, we're going to do it in France and Spain and Italy. So those are have summer sessions.
And Tom, do those tend to be full year students?
The summer session?
No, sorry, the sophomores, are they?
Oh, yeah,
full
they
year?
tend, yeah. I think there are a few who do semesters, but I think most of them are full year. It's the year in high school where actually they're a little bit more relaxed about that. Like
Right.
junior year is like, oh my God, for colleges, and I got to take US history, and and then senior year, a lot of kids just feel like I can't leave my school my last year. So sophomores, yeah. But what's interesting, I didn't know where it was going to go, and it's been steady state since after like the second year we started. It's been about 10% of the kids.
You mean overall?
Yeah.
Not per school.
Yeah, overall about 10%.
Okay.
Hi, sorry, I will have to go in a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to make a note in case it's helpful to anyone. So I wanted to let everyone know how helpful it was to get the information on the diversity and inclusion training for many different, for the faculty, the students, the host families, etc. I mean, now working for Capital, they make you pitch them on the grants that you'd like to receive for nonprofits, and that went down really, really well. As everybody probably knows, firms, especially investment management, is really under pressure to show greater commitment to diversity and inclusion, and I think that includes in their philanthropic activities. So that went over really well. So I just wanted to let everybody know that in case it's helpful for other philanthropic activities.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And the other piece too, now, is that we tried to make sure we talk to our host families about those issues, because we're getting a diverse group of kids from America to live overseas, and what's their experience, and then how do we make that a seamless transition for both the family overseas and the kid. So that was an important part of what we were doing.
Yeah, I think that's just generally very important as well, because I think also, I know there have been numerous trainings and activities, and then one of the things that we get in a global organization is that, well, things are different in America. Don't assume that the same rules apply for everywhere else in the world as America. So it's more like, okay, this is our point of view, this is the history, and then kind of maybe making it a bit of a dialogue. So I think that's very important.
I'll just jump in and say we've also been doing a lot of that work at the board level, and we'll continue it. And so it's the experience of the kids and the families, but then also just looking at SYA as an organization and how we can use that lens. And it's been fascinating, and I think really great for the board too. And we'll continue that as we move forward.
Great to hear.
Courtney, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I will. Do you have some observations as a parent? Well, maybe it's from your time to what's going on today. Do you feel obviously some DNA similarities, but some real differences?
Honestly, it's amazing how similar it is. And like the teachers, just speaking to the teachers when I was there in December, that same sort of spark of energy they all have. I mean, it's in so many ways such a similar experience as it was when I was there. And I love that about it, because I thought it was perfect then. Differences, I would say, yeah, the semester thing has definitely, this year in particular, like Meredith has talked about that a lot. And a couple of her best friends left after a semester. They were begging to stay. They really regretted having signed up for the semester. And I think that definitely changes that dynamic. So I'm really interested in seeing what happens with that going forward. But the only other thing I was going to mention actually was, I still have one child in high school, and I am hearing, more and more and more talk about kids interested in SYA, because I think the kids, especially after all of these years of now being kind of home and not sitting at screens a lot, they are itching to get out. And so I think you're going to have a couple big years after this, but we'll see.
Great.
Yeah.
Hey, I also want to mention an interesting thing, particularly to Jamie and Alex, who we're always thinking about how to connect with schools during their time on the board. Actually, Choate came to us and they closed down their own overseas off-campus programs. And they have now kind of signed up for slots to use for SYA, have us be and I just thought, perfect. This is exactly what, and my hope is that there's some other schools who say, you know what, you guys are the experts, SYA. We have to worry about other stuff, particularly in this pandemic time. We're going to send our kids through you. We believe in you. So that was just a great example that helped our numbers. And they just only want a spring semester. So it worked out fine.
Wow. That's great.
Rick.
Yeah, I would, this kind of ties into what you're saying. I would love to see more participation in SYA from some of the fine schools here in Greater Cleveland. I know we've had some kids in the past go, but we have some outstanding prep schools and high schools, private high schools, that would be great feeders for SYA. But there's a real reluctance, I think, at these schools to let their kids off for a year. And, it was such a huge, had such a huge impact on my life. I know the value of it. Although none of my children participated, all of them have studied abroad. And in fact, one now has been in Tokyo for the last 11 years. And my son taught it in Hong Kong for 6 years. So, I know the value of living abroad, studying abroad, and becoming a global citizen. I'd love to find ways to reach out more effectively to the schools here in Greater Cleveland, because they're missing out on an extraordinary experience.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, if you know people who can kind of open up a few doors for us, that would be great. And interesting, like Laurel and Hathaway Brown, some of the girls' schools are really open to us, and the kids like to go. Single-sex kids schools, kids like to go because there's a co-ed experience that they get as part of their high school experience.
My firm represented Laurel School, and I personally represented them in a number of matters. I have a very close relationship with the headmistress there. Our daughters went to Hathaway Brown, and we have very close connections there. And I'd be happy to help in any way.
Okay,
for sure.
So noted. Erin and I will follow up on that for next recruiting season. That's
Absolutely.
great. Thanks, Rick.
You bet.
That's good. Just keeping my eye on the time. We've crossed the hour mark, so want to free you all to your to go about your business. But thank you so much for joining us. We love to see all of you at our virtual events, and hopefully you'll continue to attend. Noteworthy and special thanks to Susan, who's behind the scenes on this call. She has lined up some great courses with our faculty coming up. On March 9th, we'll have the vertical city that Le Corbusier built with Benjamin, who is in SYA France. And then on April 6th, I think this one's going to be a real hit, is the France presidential election with Pascal Monteville. And I know there are a couple other ones that are coming up in May, late April and May also. I believe another one in Spain and perhaps another one in Italy. And then on April 6th, we have our annual Day of Giving, Community Day, which is SYA Day. So if you can just pencil that in on your calendar. And just please continue reading the newsletter and, writing to us, letting us know that you're out there and the things that you're interested in hearing about. We're always happy to have these little sessions and fill you in. So thanks to everyone for joining, and we hope to see you again soon.
And special thanks to you, Erin.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great to see everyone.